Conducting investigative interviews. Investigative interviews are the most relevant part of any investigation. While the physical evidence paves the way for an effective investigation, interviewing the complainant or witnesses point towards further leads. Same way, interviewing the suspects concludes the evidence in an investigation, as it helps finding their motive for such violation, for which they are being investigated. A good interview also finds about the other violations by the same accused, or about the people who could be involved in the present investigation. Interviews are also essential for supporting the natural course of justice. It is utmost important to provide a chance to the suspect to explain their side of the story. So, in this video, we would be discussing about the interview preparation, that is how the investigators should prepare for the investigative interview. Seating arrangements, warnings and representation. We would also talk about building rapport with the interviewee. Provide sample investigative questions. Discuss on behavioral analysis and how to conclude. For sample interviews, you can log into our website and go through the resources section. It is always crucial that the interview is conducted in a thorough and professional manner. An unprofessional behavior may cause risk to the investigation or the investigator. Similarly, it may also result into an allegation of unlawful restraint or conduct. To conduct an interview in a thorough professional manner, as a thumb rule, following precautions are a must. Switch off your hand phones, and if there is another phone in the interview room, mute the ringer. There should be no disturbance during the interviewing process. If there are two or more interviewers who are deputed to interview, or observe, or are witnessing the interview, no personal discussions should be allowed during the entire interview. This means no side comments or off-the-cuff remarks. There should be no judgments, no shaming the interviewee. At any given time, only one interviewer should be asking questions or seeking clarity. Let the interviewee complete the answer, then seek clarity or ask another question. They should be never interrupted. Always control the flow of interview in a subtle manner. There are chances that the interviewee is taking the interview in a different direction, or is explaining more than desired. Have patience, but subtly coax them towards the real issue or question. Never be rude or threatening during the interview. Remember, patience is the main key for any successful interview. Interview of a lady employee is to be conducted only by a lady staff member, or at least, in presence of a lady staff member, who could be a colleague or HR representative. This is an important aspect, and in some countries, a legal requirement as well. Having considered the best practices, not move to the preparation of the interview. You would agree that for any successful interview, the first requirement is preparation. It should always be ensured that the interview is scheduled when the initial analysis of the physical evidence is complete. The interviewee should have their facts in place before embarking on the interviewing process. For preparation, following should be considered by the interviewer. Purpose. It should be considered that if the interview is for fact-seeking, or is the intent is to develop the interviewee into a potential source? If it is fact-seeking, the preparation should be limited to the case at hand. If you are looking for a potential source, more preparation is required, knowing the interviewee better, their background, had they been involved in any earlier investigation, etc. Also, you must consider if the interview is for seeking an alibi from the subject. That be the case, finding a counter for an alibi is equally important. For instance, if the interviewee says that he had not attended the office, you should be ready with their access details, or with CCTV footage. Similarly, if they claim they had no financial transactions, be ready with account statements or other interviews to counter that, if can. Sharing information. Should you tell the interviewee they are a target of the investigation? With our experience, we have realized that most of the subjects already know that they are subjects, till they reach the stage of interview. If the interviewer remains professional in their approach, and is not judgmental, it's always good to let the interviewee know that they are the target, in case they are, to get a defense recorded. This way, they would also further cooperate with additional evidence, to clear their name or providing additional names of potential subjects, to complete the investigation. Scenario planning. Always consider a variety of potential avenues the interview may take. Interviewers who become distracted or surprised by shared details have difficulty focusing on the interview objectives. When you are preparing for the interview questions, also prepare probable responses. They would not match, but at least you would be prepared. Interviewers may use this template while planning the interview. As you can see, the template has questions related to the interview, have different probable responses, which the interviewee may give, and accordingly, has further questions. You can line up the physical evidence as well, connected with each question, to counter the interviewee, in case there is a misleading reply. Privacy. The employees do not like to be interviewed in view of their colleagues, hence choose the location of the interview accordingly. So, setting the concepts of privacy is also key considerations when choosing the ideal interview setting. Sequencing. A key consideration when conducting multiple interviews is the order and timing of such interviews. Sequence the interviewees in order, so that there are minimal chances of disclosure, and the ultimate accused is caught by surprise. Always interview witnesses or probable witnesses first. Get information from them with a request not to share with anyone, then proceed with probable subjects. Even within witnesses, first with HR, then process owners, then manager or business associates. If there are multiple subjects, ensure simultaneous interviews at one time to avoid any synchronized replies. Many people confuse the interviews with interrogation. While both are a technique to question for investigation, there is a vast difference between the two. While interrogation is always with the accused, the interviews are with all, the accused, or the witness, and even with the complainant. Let's understand the difference between the interview and interrogation. An interview is non-accusatory, fact-seeking, and conversational. It is conducted to find the fact in a subtle manner. While an interrogation is accusatory and is conducted to seek a confession, there is guilt suspected from the beginning. While preparing for the questions, the interviewers may consider that there is nothing wrong in combining interview techniques with interrogation tactics. You can start an interview with non-accusatory questions, seeking facts, and when the interviewee is seen hiding facts, there is no harm in switching to interrogation techniques in non-threatening way, so to get the facts right. Now we move to seating arrangements for an interview. While choosing the place, may consider that, as far as possible, never interview a suspect or witness around the place or floor where they normally work. The interview should be in a closed cabin, securing the privacy of vision and sound. Also, the cabin should have minimal distractions, visual or audio. This include minimal or no use of telephones. It should also be large enough so that the interviewee should not feel trapped or claustrophobic, and all should seat comfortably. The above diagram would explain this much better. Preferably, the interviewer should never sit across the table from interviewee. An interviewer should always have clear view of full body of the interviewee to read the body language. So, the interviewer should sit in front, getting full view of the interviewee's full body, without any physical barriers, like laptop or computer screen. Interviewer should be able to see the behavior, body language, expressions etc. of the interviewee, to judge the truthfulness of the replies. Always allow the interviewee to sit nearest to the door, with back towards the door if possible. This reduces the chance of an allegation of unlawful restraint by the interviewee. Also, back towards the door will ensure they are not distracted. The witness, HR person or legal assistant, if any, should sit sidewise to the interviewer, again having view of the interviewee. If the interview extends to a lengthy period, the interviewee should be periodically asked if they want a bio break, which should be recorded on voice or writing. It is always advisable to record the interviews, however jurisdictional legality should be considered while doing so. Recording of interview allows much eye contact, making it possible for the interviewer to observe the anxiety and body language. Interview preparations are done. You are now face to face with the interviewee. Remember, no interviewee should be considered as guilty, even though there is ample evidence for their guilt. Once the interviewer has made up their mind about the guilt of the interviewee, it reflects in their behavior and the interviewee is, thereafter, always on guard and would not come out with whole facts. So, to get full cooperation from the interviewees, you have to make them at ease, which, in other words, is called rapport building. For this, the interviewer must have an open mind and should appear unbiased. Even though your company's code of conduct mandates interviewees to cooperate during investigations, they are not legally bound to answer your questions. Hence, building rapport would help you immensely and you would be getting the best of evidence if rapport is maintained. For building the rapport, the interviewers should first ask generic questions to put the interviewee at ease. Questions like interviewee's tenure in the present job, understanding the processes done by them, difficulties faced during the processes, past job discussions, hobbies, support from the team or manager etc. Being non-threatening questions, put the interviewee at ease and they start sharing freely. Once you have built the rapport and the interviewee is at ease, you can shift slowly to the investigative questions. Remember, this is the beginning of the sensitive phase of interview, hence, has to be dealt in most professional manner. It is understood that the interviewer has already done the homework, analyzed all the evidence collected so far, and developed investigative questions, which need to be answered by the interviewee. Here on, the questions have to be sequenced in order of development of the issue at hand, and should be posed step by step in more probing way, to understand the actual facts. It is often seen interviewers timidly approach sensitive topics regardless of their significance in the case. This cannot be allowed, and there is no harm in posing direct questions at this time, and it needs to be understood that till the clarity is there, the probing should continue. These are a few sample questions. Please take your time to read the same. You may pause this video to allow you more time for this reading. Now, having understood the sample questions, let's move towards behavior analysis. A mere observation of the behavior or body language would show symptoms to identify the probable truthfulness of a witness or interviewee. Behavioral analysis focuses on each of the three channels of communication. Verbal to, which means word choice and arrangement. Nonverbal to, including general posture, movement, gestures, and also paralinguistic to, which means speech other than spoken words. An interviewer should observe the interviewee's behavior throughout the course of the interview and consider deviations from an established baseline. You would be surprised how easily you are able to evaluate the behavioral change as the interview progresses. Explaining this further, let's discuss each of these three channels. Verbal deceptiveness would be demonstrated by the word choice like use vague language or overly specific denials, referring to previous statements to avoid directly answering the question. This tactic is referred to as lying by referral and is particularly cunning. Deceptive witnesses may also avoid giving definitive answers in an effort to minimize the information disclosed. Truthful witnesses will engage in largely dissimilar behaviors by providing definite statements and minimal generalizations or qualifiers. The deceptive witnesses often use bolstering statements in an effort to convince the interviewer they are giving truthful answers. Truthful witnesses tend to offer natural and spontaneous answers without the need to convince the interviewer of their honesty. Non-verbal deceptiveness includes fear or anger, crossed arms, crossed legs, or hands in front of their face, and also getting agitated unnecessarily. Paralinguistic deceptiveness includes anxiety. The symptoms include hands, fingers, arms, legs movements, shifting of eyes, avoiding eye contact, drying of lips, sweat, frequent swallowing, defeat. The symptoms include drooping of shoulders, body, slumping on chair, surrendering, and also, many times, getting violent, agitated. Recording of interview. Recording of interview has its merits, however local legal barriers must be weighed before deciding to record the interview. While the merits of recording are, interviewer can concentrate more on interview rather than writing, typing. It makes the actual record of interview. Avoids any complications arising of estranged staff. Interviewer can notice the uneasy body language of interviewee. However, before jumping to recording of the interview, let's remember. Covert audio recording of interviews is not allowed. The interviewee has to be given a prior notice before recording. Recorded interview is not admissible in court of law in many jurisdictions and is only an aid to investigation. The audio recording is intended for internal purposes. All interview recordings would require to be stored in secured location, normally secured server. Under the strict control of investigations team, always be mindful that audio records will potentially become material subject to legal challenge in proceedings. It is recommended at the conclusion of an interview, the interviewee will be requested to write a statement, setting out her understanding of the matters discussed during the interview. There are also certain precautions required before recording of interview. It is hence advised that this narration should be recorded in the interviewer's voice before the start of the interview. Ending of interview. Sometimes that last few minutes in the interviewing room can be the most productive phase of the interview. Before ending the interview, thank the interviewee for their time and for helping you to get to the truth. Back up slowly and allow silence to hang in to give the person an opportunity to be forthcoming with more information. Once they aren't being questioned, interview subjects have been known to divulge revealing details that weren't discussed during the interview. Investigators should not discount this important opportunity to hear what they have to add. Conclusion. High-quality interviews are the building blocks of a sound investigation. This chapter has sought to provide a variety of tools and considerations for use in investigative interviews. In summary, best practices include, first and foremost, methodical preparation and a thoughtful assessment of the objectives. Such preparation, along with a systematic and focused approach to conducting the interview, most often leads to successful and defendable interview results. While no set of rules exist for the craft of interviewing, recent scrutiny has clearly shown that we must commit ourselves to conduct interviews and investigations in a timely, thorough, and well-reasoned manner. With this charge in mind, we trust that these tools and considerations will help you to improve your interviewing skills, and we thank you for your interest. Before we end this session, let's reiterate best practices for a successful interview. Take thorough notes and maintain the originals. Do not make promises. Maximize the advantages of rapport. You run the interview, not the witness or attorneys. Know when to stop. Use your strengths and be sincere. Do not bluff unless you are ready to be called. Ask the tough questions. Live with the answers, even if they hurt your case. Remember, preparation is the key.